Silas lived his life in ticks and talks. For 50 years, he had been a master watchmaker, a surgeon of seconds. His world a universe of tiny gears and delicate springs. His hands, once steady enough to place a screw the size of a dust mote, now betrayed him with a fine, persistent tremor. Forced into retirement, he found himself adrift in a sea of time he could no longer measure or control. His small house in the arid outskirts of Phoenix was a museum of his former self. Clocks of every kind lined the walls, their relentless ticking a constant reminder of his own obsolescence in a world of silent, soulless digital displays. His backyard was a mirror of his spirit, a patch of cracked earth baked hard by the Arizona sun, punctuated by a few defiant, withered weeds. He had once dreamed of a garden, but now the effort seemed pointless. What was the use of planting things that grew so slowly when his own time was running out so fast? He would spend his days at his old workbench, staring at the disassembled guts of a beautiful pocket watch, unable to command his fingers to do the work his mind knew so well. He was a man built for precision, now living a life of frustrating imprecision. He first saw it from his kitchen window, a moving rock at the edge of his property. He put on his glasses. It wasn't a rock. It was a desert tortoise, ancient and implacable, making its slow, deliberate way across his barren yard. Its shell was a mosaic of dust and time, its leathery skin wrinkled like the very earth it walked upon. Silas felt a surge of irritation. It was another sign of neglect, a wild thing wandering into his forgotten space. He went outside, intending to shoo it away. "Go on, get out of here," he grumbled, waving his hands. The tortoise paid him no mind. It simply paused, blinked its old reptilian eyes, and then continued its unhurried journey. Its pace was almost insulting to a man who had spent his life in pursuit of perfect timing. This creature operated on a geological clock, utterly indifferent to the frantic ticking that filled Silas's house. Frustrated, Silas gave up and went back inside, leaving the tortoise to its own ponderous devices. The tortoise did not leave. It seemed to have adopted the barren yard as its own. Silas found it basking in the morning sun or taking shelter from the midday heat under the shadow of a single, resilient creosote bush. He found himself watching it, his irritation slowly giving way to a grudging curiosity. He looked it up in an old encyclopedia. A desert tortoise, a creature that could live for 80 years, a master of survival in a harsh world. One afternoon, he saw it nibbling on one of the dry weeds. On a strange impulse, Silas went inside, washed the crisp lettuce leaf from his refrigerator, and placed it on the ground a few feet away from the creature. He retreated to his porch to watch. It took the tortoise nearly 10 minutes to travel those few feet. Silas, a man of impatience, found himself holding his breath, completely absorbed in the slow-motion drama. The tortoise finally reached the leaf and began to eat with a quiet, methodical crunch. It was the first time in years Silas had felt a sense of connection to another living being. He named it Cronus, after the Titan of time. The desert monsoon arrived without warning. The sky turned a bruised purple-gray, and the wind whipped the dust into a frenzy. Rain fell not in drops, but in solid, driving sheets. Silas's first thought was for Cronus. He panicked, imagining the small creature being swept away in a flash flood, its slow pace no match for the storm's sudden violence. He threw on a coat and rushed into the deluge, his old eyes scanning the yard frantically. He found Cronus in the middle of the yard, right where the water was beginning to pool. But the tortoise was not struggling. It had simply done what its ancestors had done for millions of years. It had retracted its head and legs deep into its shell, becoming a living fortress. The wind howled, the rain hammered down, but inside that dome of bone and keratin, the creature was safe, patient, and perfectly still. Watching the tortoise, Silas had an epiphany. He had spent his retirement raging against his own weakness, his shaky hands, his slowing mind. He saw it as a failure. But Cronus showed him something else. Strength wasn't always about speed or dexterity. Sometimes true strength was about endurance. It was about having a shell, a core of experience and wisdom to retreat into when the world became too chaotic. He had been so focused on what his hands could no longer do, he had forgotten the knowledge they still held. When the storm passed, leaving the air clean and the earth dark with moisture, something had shifted in Silas. He looked at his yard not as a wasteland, but as Cronus's home. He looked at his hands not as traders, but as tools, albeit slower ones. He went to his shed. He started clearing the weeds, his movements slow but deliberate. He brought in rocks and stones, his hands shaking as he lifted them, but he learned to work with the tremor, to use its rhythm. He began building a small habitat for Cronus, a rock garden with a shallow basin to catch rainwater and native plants that the tortoise could eat. The work was slow, painstaking, and deeply satisfying. One afternoon, he sat at his workbench again. He looked at the disassembled pocket watch. His hand still trembled, but his mind was calm. He picked up a pair of tweezers and, moving with the same unhurried deliberation as the tortoise in his garden, he picked up the tiniest gear and set it perfectly into place. The ticking of the clocks no longer sounded like a judgment. It was just a rhythm, one of many in the world. He had spent his life measuring time in frantic, fleeting seconds. Cronus had taught him to measure it in patience, persistence, and the slow, steady growth of a garden.